They make you question your own memory. They twist your words until you apologize for things you never did. And the worst part? You don't even realize it's happening. You remember what happened. You were there. You saw it with your own eyes. But the person standing in front of you is telling you, with complete conviction, that it never happened. And somehow, by the end of the conversation, you're the one apologizing. This is gaslighting, and it is one of the most insidious forms of psychological manipulation that exists. The term comes from a 1944 film called Gaslight, in which a husband systematically manipulates his wife into believing she is losing her mind. He dims the gas-powered lights in their home, then denies that anything has changed when she notices. Over time, she stops trusting her own perception of reality. What makes gaslighting so dangerous is that it doesn't look like abuse. There are no bruises, no raised voices, at least not always. It operates in the space between words, in the subtle reframing of events, in the slow erosion of your confidence in your own mind. Psychologist Robin Stern, author of The Gaslight Effect, describes it as a form of emotional manipulation that causes the victim to question their own feelings, instincts, and sanity. And it happens far more often than most people realize. A 2019 study published in the American Sociological Review found that gaslighting is not just a relationship phenomenon. It operates in workplaces, families, medical settings, and even political systems. Today, we're going to break down 5 unmistakable signs that someone is gaslighting you. These are patterns backed by clinical psychology research. And once you learn to recognize them, they lose their power over you. Before we get into the 5 signs, you need to understand the psychology behind why gaslighting works in the first place. Gaslighting exploits a fundamental vulnerability in human cognition called memory conformity. Research by psychologist Fiona Gabbard at the University of Aberdeen demonstrated that when 2 people witness the same event, but one provides a different account, the other person's memory can actually change to match the false version. Your brain doesn't store memories like a video camera. It reconstructs them every time you recall them. And that reconstruction is heavily influenced by social pressure. This is why gaslighters don't need to be physically threatening. They just need to be persistent and confident. If someone tells you with enough conviction that something didn't happen, especially someone you trust, your brain will start to waver. Not because you're weak, but because that's how human memory actually works. Neuroscientist Elizabeth Loftus spent decades proving that memories can be implanted, altered, and erased through suggestion alone. Her research showed that roughly 30% of people can be made to believe in completely fabricated events if the suggestions are delivered with enough authority and repetition. Gaslighters intuitively understand this. They don't need to read the research. They've learned through trial and error that if they deny reality consistently enough, other people will eventually accept the denial as truth. It is a strategy that works precisely because the human brain was never designed to defend against it. The most classic gaslighting behavior is flat denial. You bring up something that happened, a conversation, an argument, a promise they made, and they look at you with complete sincerity and say, "That never happened. Not I don't remember. Not I see it differently." But a categorical, absolute denial of reality, as if the event you experienced simply did not exist. This is psychologically devastating because it puts you in an impossible position. You know what happened, but the person you're talking to, often someone you love, or someone in a position of authority, is telling you with total confidence that your memory is wrong. Clinical psychologist Dr. Stephanie Sarkis, author of Gaslighting, Recognize Manipulative and Emotionally Abusive People, explains that denial is the gaslighter's foundational tool. Everything else builds on this. Once they establish that your memory cannot be trusted, they gain control of the narrative. And here's what makes it even more insidious. Gaslighters often deny things that just happened, not events from months ago that could plausibly be misremembered. They deny conversations from that morning. They deny texts they sent hours ago. They deny promises made the previous day. The goal is not to win an argument. The goal is to make you doubt your own mind. And the more you doubt yourself, the more dependent you become on their version of reality. It's a slow, methodical process. And by the time you realize what's happening, you've already lost significant trust in your own perception. The second sign of gaslighting is emotional invalidation disguised as rationality. When you express hurt, frustration, or discomfort, a gaslighter doesn't engage with your feelings. They dismiss them. You're overreacting. You're being too sensitive. Why do you always make such a big deal out of nothing? These aren't expressions of disagreement. They are tools of control. Psychologist John Gottman, who spent over 40 years studying relationships at the University of Washington, identified this pattern as one of the most destructive dynamics in human interaction. He called it stonewalling with contempt, a combination of refusing to engage with someone's emotional experience while simultaneously framing that experience as irrational. The effect is devastating. Over time, the person being gaslighted stops trusting their own emotional responses. They begin to second-guess every feeling. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe this isn't a big deal. Maybe something is wrong with me. A 2020 study published in the journal Personal Relationships found that chronic emotional invalidation is one of the strongest predictors of anxiety disorders and depression in intimate relationships. The researchers concluded that being repeatedly told your feelings are wrong creates a form of learned helplessness, a psychological state where you stop advocating for yourself because you've been conditioned to believe your perceptions are fundamentally flawed. This is not a disagreement about feelings. This is a systematic dismantling of your ability to feel at all. The third sign of gaslighting is a phenomenon psychologists call DARVO: deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. It was formally identified by psychologist Jennifer Freyd at the University of Oregon. Here's how it works. You confront a gaslighter about something they did, lying, breaking a promise, being cruel. Instead of acknowledging the behavior, they deny it happened. Then they attack you for bringing it up. And finally, they reverse the roles. Suddenly, they're the victim, and you're the one who's being unfair. I can't believe you'd accuse me of that. After everything I've done for you, you're the one who's always starting fights. I'm the one who's suffering here. Within 60 seconds, the entire conversation has been flipped. You came in with a legitimate grievance. You leave feeling guilty for having raised it. Freyd's research showed that DARVO is not random. It is a predictable, patterned response used by people who engage in interpersonal harm. She found that perpetrators who use DARVO are significantly more likely to reoffend because the strategy works. It silences the victim and eliminates accountability. The most dangerous aspect of DARVO is that it exploits your empathy. If you're a caring person who doesn't want to hurt others, the gaslighter weaponizes that against you. Your capacity for compassion becomes the tool of your own manipulation. And each time you back down, the pattern gets reinforced. The gaslighter learns that aggression and reversal will shut down any challenge to their behavior. The fourth sign of gaslighting is systematic isolation, and it almost never looks like what you'd expect. Gaslighters rarely say you can't see your friends anymore. That would be too obvious. Instead, they erode your relationships gradually. They make subtle comments about the people you're close to. Your sister doesn't really have your best interests at heart. I don't think your friend Sarah is a good influence. Your mother has always been controlling. Have you noticed that? Over weeks and months, these small remarks accumulate. You start seeing your support system through the gaslighter's lens. You pull back from people who would otherwise help you see clearly. Psychologist Lundy Bancroft, who spent over 25 years working with abusive personalities, describes this as divide and conquer. The gaslighter's greatest threat is an outside perspective, someone who might say, "That's not normal. That's not okay." So they systematically undermine every relationship that could provide that reality check. A 2018 study in the Journal of Interpersonal Violence found that social isolation is one of the most reliable early indicators of psychological abuse. The researchers found that victims who maintained strong external relationships were significantly more likely to recognize manipulative behavior and exit the situation. Gaslighters know this intuitively. The isolation serves a dual purpose. First, it removes external validation. Without friends and family to confirm your reality, you become entirely dependent on the gaslighter's version of events. Second, it creates shame. When you've been cut off from your support system, reaching out for help feels impossible because admitting you've been isolated means admitting something is deeply wrong. The fifth and perhaps most disorienting sign of gaslighting is historical revision. This goes beyond denying a single event. The gaslighter reconstructs entire timelines. I never said I would do that. You must be confusing me with someone else. That's not how it happened at all. What actually happened was, you always remember things wrong. You've done this before. This is different from sign number 1 because it's not just denial. It's replacement. The gaslighter doesn't just erase your version of events. They install a new version, and they deliver it with such conviction that you begin to wonder if maybe, just maybe, their version is the real one. Cognitive psychologist Daniel Shatter at Harvard University identified what he calls the 7 sins of memory, fundamental ways in which human memory fails. One of these sins is suggestibility, the tendency of memories to be altered by information received after the original event. Gaslighters exploit this vulnerability by consistently providing alternative narratives until the original memory degrades. Research from the University of California, Irvine showed that when false information is repeated frequently enough, the brain begins to treat it as familiar, and familiarity is often confused with truth. This is called the illusory truth effect. The gaslighter doesn't need to provide evidence. They just need to repeat their version of events more often and more confidently than you repeat yours. The result is a complete collapse of your historical narrative. You can no longer distinguish between what actually happened and what you've been told happened. Your autobiography, your understanding of your own life, has been rewritten by someone else. If you've recognized any of these patterns in your own life, the most important thing you can do is start documenting. Write things down. Save text messages. Keep a journal of conversations and events with dates and details so that you have an external record that cannot be altered by someone else's narrative. Psychologist Dr. Ramani Durvasula, one of the leading experts on narcissistic abuse, recommends what she calls the gray rock method, becoming as emotionally unresponsive as possible to the gaslighter's provocations. When you stop giving emotional reactions, the gaslighter loses their primary source of control. Reconnect with your support system. Even if relationships have been strained, reach out. The people who care about you have likely noticed changes in your behavior. They may be waiting for you to ask for help. Seek professional support. A therapist trained in emotional abuse, particularly one familiar with coercive control dynamics, can help you rebuild trust in your own perceptions. You are not crazy. Your memory is not broken. You have been systematically conditioned to doubt yourself. And most importantly, name it. When you can identify what is happening to you as gaslighting, it immediately loses a significant portion of its power. The manipulation relies on you not knowing it's manipulation. The moment you see the pattern, you take back control. Recovery is not instant. Rebuilding trust in your own mind takes time. But every single expert in this field agrees on one thing. Awareness is the first and most critical step. And by watching this video, you've already taken it. If this video helped you see something more clearly, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Gaslighting thrives in silence. And the more people understand these patterns, the harder they become to use. Subscribe to Hidden Motives for more psychology-backed breakdowns of the manipulation tactics that shape our daily lives. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. And leave a comment below. Have you ever experienced any of these signs? Your story could help someone else recognize what's happening to them. Until next time, trust your mind. It's sharper than